Just after 1:30 this afternoon, police were called to a home in Catherine Street in the heart of Maitland, where they found a woman with serious head injuries. Police allege the 38-year-old was hit in the head with a hammer, which has been seized by police. A short time later, a 23-year-old man was located at a nearby car park with injuries and was arrested.
The male has approached a car in the car park at the Kmart car park area, and that car has left the car park, and we're seeking the community's assistance to locate that car.
The female, who sustained serious head and upper body injuries, was transported to John Hunter Hospital by ambulance. A number of police remained on scene throughout the afternoon, where a crime scene was established.
It's still an ongoing investigation. We're still trying to ascertain how the incident occurred. We've received some calls from the community that we're investigating in relation to how things transpired.
The man and woman were both residents of the house but weren't in a relationship. It's still not known what sparked the alleged argument, but police expect to lay charges tonight. The signatures of 3 Liberal councillors that could help undo what's being labelled as one of the most controversial items debated in council this year. Just 2 weeks ago, it voted to preference financial institutions that are environmentally responsible over those that aren't, including the big banks. But it could be short-lived.
I suggested that we put a rescission in after I saw both Joel Fitzgibbon actually call for a rescission to be put in, and also I saw the unions calling for this to be undone. This sent a really, really bad message.
But the Greens say the rescission motion is disappointing and short-sighted.
I think they're just playing politics with this issue. It's hard to believe that they're putting forward a motion to try and reduce the amount of environmentally and socially responsible investment that Newcastle Council has.
The backlash also prompted a survey by the Australia Institute. Results made public this morning reveal that out of 764 residents surveyed in the Newcastle federal electorate, 47% support Newcastle's decision to include environmental factors, and 51% believe coal investment is financially risky.
I think the people of Newcastle have spoken, and Newcastle Council needs to listen to what people of Newcastle say and act in the best interests of residents and ratepayers.
But Mr Luke says the second question is misleading.
We don't invest in coal businesses or companies, and that's something people need to understand there. We do not invest in any coal companies, we invest in banks.
Vivian von Drainen, NBN News.
It's a familiar sound to those living along a rail corridor. Ray Johnson has lived next to the tracks in Islington for 37 years.
Actually, the slowness they go creates more of the rumble. If they're travelling quicker, you don't get as much. I've had visitors that say, oh, that's the 4th or 5th train go past, and I say, well, are you still counting?
Over the years, he's been forced to pay out of his own pocket to muffle train noise.
It's for your own benefit to stop the rattle.
Thousands of others in a similar situation, as well as those who live along this rail corridor pictured in orange, could soon have access to funding through the state government's freight noise attenuation program. To be eligible, houses need to be no more than 100 metres away from the tracks, no higher than 3 stories, and experience noise levels higher than 70 decibels during the day. Up to $30,000 is available to those that qualify along the rail corridor. The money can be spent on new windows, doors or ventilation systems, but there is a catch. The state government will only pick up the bill if you've owned your house for at least 7 years. Residents who have lived in their house for less than 2 years will have to pay 85% of the cost. Homeowners can find more information by calling this number. Georgina Smythe, NBN News.
In terms of impact on Hunter Water, in terms of its customers, in terms of recycled water, it actually means absolutely nothing. There'll be no impact operationally on the supply of local water or on water prices.
It was a day where many were united in a mission to stand out from the crowd. The inaugural Type 1 Day raising awareness and funds for research into Type 1 diabetes.
We'd love to see this take off. There's been great support in the Hunter for the first year.
With around 60 children and adolescents newly diagnosed each year, the Hunter has one of the highest incidence rates of the disease in Australia.
At this point in time, we've got 380 children just in Newcastle.
All money raised today will go towards research into HMRI's artificial pancreas program. It aims to simplify diabetes management by using automated closed-loop technology to adjust insulin delivery.
Making a system so that there's less testing, less finger pricking, and the person will be able to live a more normal life.
Kate Ryan's son was diagnosed last year, and she knows just how challenging the condition is to manage.
It's exhausting, it's constant. Your day revolves around blood sugar tests, insulin injections.
The whole family, not just the child, the entire family has to change their lifestyle.
Michael Kane, NBN News.
He's achieved plenty during his career in wheelchair racing, but winning New York Marathon number 5 last year will go down as one of Kurt Fearnley's favourite moments. There's still plenty of motivation to win title number 6.
Oh, I'd love to win 10 New Yorks. I know that this is my last Paralympics in Rio, that this is my last Commonwealth Games will be in 2018, but I hope to run New York for a lot of years to come.
This year, organisers of the event in the Big Apple have joined forces with Chicago officials to offer a $10,000 prize to the wheelchair athlete with the most points earned in both races. It's all part of the build-up to the World Marathon Majors in 2016.
All 6 of the major marathons in the world will host a wheelchair event, will have prize money, will have invites, will get the best people in the world out there, and then they will crown at the end of the year the best marathoner.
At 34, Fearnley doesn't have many years left to reap the rewards. Instead, the Paralympic gold medalist is taking pride in his efforts, which have blazed a trail for future stars to make a career out of the sport.
My first New York Marathon win, I think I won about $3,000. And then every year after that, that's grown to now the first prize is $20,000.
Fearnley will begin his busy end to 2015 by competing at the Sydney Marathon on September 20.
Witnesses watched in horror as the incident unfolded. Just after 3 o'clock this afternoon, police rushed to the Warners Bay post office, responding to reports of a man armed with a large knife.
I walked inside and the guy with the knife was in the corner threatening the guy that works there, so the police have arrived on the scene. The guy with the knife's, made a move towards the police officers and then they've opened fire.
The man, whose identity is yet to be revealed, died at the scene. The shooting has left residents of the suburb shaken. What they say is most terrifying, where and when it took place. It was the peak after-school period in a popular shopping district. Police have launched a critical incident investigation, which will be overseen by the Professional Standards Command. Amanda Douglas, NBN News. Arriving at court in Cessnock this morning, Nathan Thomas Merchant was met with a torrent of abuse. Waiting for him, family and friends of his former partner, whose dog, the 22-year-old, is accused of killing inside her home last month. Sarah Dow broke down as she recounted the moment she discovered Toby's body.
Yeah, I'll never forget that day. It's like a crime scene.
Like it's destroyed her. But as long as we stay hard and fight for this, it's, get justice.
Every time she goes to the house, she just drops on her hands and knees where she's found Toby and just bawls her eyes out, and she can't go back to the house at all.
Merchant is facing charges of animal cruelty, which carry a maximum 5-year jail sentence. Today he was excused from appearing before proceedings began, his lawyer asking for a 6-week adjournment. Mr Merchant's lawyer didn't enter a plea on behalf of her client. He's also been excused from attending his next court appearance on October 21. Outside, animal rights campaigners held placards. They want harsher penalties for those convicted of cruelty offences.
There's people out there that are saying no, that it's not okay. You can't do that to an animal.
Amanda Douglas, NBN News.
Time is money for the state government.
It's important we crack on with the project. Newcastle needs the light rail. We're not going to see further delays, further cost increases associated with delay.
The Minister introduced the Transport Administration Amendment Bill today in a bid to bypass a delayed New South Wales Court of Appeal decision centred around the need for an Act of Parliament to remove a rail line.
This legislation facilitates me as Minister to be able to remove the line, get on and put the new track down with the light rail project in place.
But member for Newcastle Tim Krakenthorpe says circumventing the system is arrogant.
The community has taken on the government because the government hasn't followed due process. The government's appealed that with taxpayers' money. The least they can do is show the respect to the court.
The Baird government has made no secret of its plans for mixed green commercial or residential space in the corridor, with Urban Growth last month releasing 4 concept plans.
I'm now calling on the Labor Party, particularly who have a lot of members up through the Newcastle region, to get on and actually back the project and back the bill.
But it seems support will be hard to come by.
As far as Labor's concerned, our policy is to have the rail go down the rail line to Newcastle Station. If this government wants to put light rail in, they should put light rail down to Newcastle Station.
Without Labor, the government will have to rely on the support of minor parties to get the bill through. Georgina Smythe, NBN News.
Councillors last night have indicated that it's merely a benchmarking exercise, but what I would say to that is it's the Maitland Aquatic Centre employees who set the benchmark, particularly in terms of aquatic safety and water quality.
Back on the course, enjoying a laugh with mates. Nelson Bay Golf Club members came out in force just 3 days after fire ravaged their clubhouse.
Our board has shown a lot of confidence in being able to overcome this problem, and we as members are prepared to support them to the hilt.
It's a bit of a shock, but the guys here, they're a good bunch of guys and they'll get it back together again.
With a few temporary measures in place, including a portable bar, it was back to business for the popular club. As for its functions and events, other venues across the region have offered their support.
The Bowling Club, Horizons Golf Club, Pacific Dunes Golf Club, everyone has come to our assistance. People have bought coffee vouchers up from the coffee shops for the workers. It just goes on and on and on, and the assistance and support's phenomenal.
While the cause of the fire is still being determined, authorities don't believe it was suspicious. The structure is being assessed by engineers.
There will be demolition of the site. We don't know the extent of that as yet, whether it's a total demolition or part, but we'll probably get an indication of that next week, I'd say.
Renee Feder, NBN News.
Nathan Brown officially appointed Knights coach and left in no doubt of the massive task ahead of him.
We wish you every success.
Thank you.
We need it. We have not had a season that we're very proud of.
He's very passionate, the chairman. He's a good man. He's very successful, obviously, and hopefully his passion will rub off onto plenty of the players as well.
The former Dragons, Huddersfield and St Helens mentor believes his ability to resurrect clubs got him across the line.
We didn't win at the Dragons, but we got close numbers of times, and when we left, Wayne sort of credited me for putting the club in good position. Then I went to Huddersfield, who were down the bottom, and we got to the top four, and they're still in the top four today.
Brown thinks off-field dramas, such as the at times turbulent reign of Nathan Tinkler, have been factors in Newcastle's slide to the bottom.
Everything's repairable, and with the support of the local people and some good young players coming through over a period of time, we're sure we can change that.
The 42-year-old acknowledged the Knights already have a solid contingent of promising players, but hasn't thoroughly assessed the squad. He wouldn't be drawn on the possibility of bringing Robbie Farah to Newcastle. For now, he's hoping to develop more leadership within the existing group and establish a side the region will be proud of.
You want a good portion of your players to come from not Newcastle, but the Hunter Valley, the Central Coast, the North Coast. That whole area should be classed as a local type of area.
As for Danny Baderis, Brown will speak to the club legend in the coming days to discuss his coaching role for next season.
It's called the Operation Artists Exhibition, and these finished works have been produced by young hospital patients.
And they do art making to help with their recovery, to help with their fine motor skills, to help with their depression.
Eliza York has been in and out of hospital since she was 3 months old, and this program has helped her pass the time during the long stints away from home.
When you're in hospital, you can do some things instead of laying in bed all the time and just doing nothing, watching TV. You can actually do different kinds of artwork and everything.
Meanwhile, a local men's shed is doing its bit for the John Hunter Children's Hospital.
We're making a cubby house or a playhouse for Ronald McDonald House.
The club has made all types of equipment over the years and is committed to doing anything it puts its mind to.
We've done things for the autistic school, we've done things for the local schools and a lot of things for older people.
It was all hands on deck as everyone put in a hard day's work. After a hearty lunch, it was time to get back on the tools.
Guys, it's now time to get back to work. Lunch is over. Have a go.
Michael Kane, NBN News.
I'm probably 10 years their senior on average, so yeah, they'll soon snap me out of it with their enthusiasm and terrible jokes. So I look forward to that.
Growing up in Western Sydney, Radovan Pavicevic was heavily exposed to football. But when your dad does this for a living,
off the grid, it's car number 17, Andrew Pavicevic.
It's easy to see why he also likes motorsport. Andrei Pavicevic's career would take his family to England and Italy. When they returned to Australia, Radovan became a junior go-karting champion, only playing football to keep fit.
At around 13 years old, I did like a season of half racing, half football, and after that season, I really wanted to go for it in the football side of things. Hey, I'm Rad.
I'm Aaron. Aaron, how you going, mate? Nice to meet you both.
To find out just how good the striker is behind the wheel, we set up a race against V8 driver Aaron Russell and invited Jets teammate Andy Brennan along for the ride.
I'm confident it should be a good race. Aaron seems to be pretty good at what he does.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident. No, I'm not confident at all. I've got two superb drivers to go up against, so I'm just hoping not to crash and ruin one of their cars.
Preparing to hit the track competitively for the first time in almost 5 years, the kid they call Rad was the underdog. Ultimately, it was Russell who took the honours by just 2 seconds, with Brennan a distant last.
I thought I was doing well till he got past me. You know, when he got past, I was like, all right, I'll copy him for a couple of laps, see what he did, and my lap times improved a bit. I felt I was doing a bit better, but a bit rusty.
The 20-year-old is hoping it's a different story on the pitch. Having joined the Jets youth in 2012, Pavicevic's career was on the rise until he suffered a broken arm playing in the NPL in 2014.
The mindset I had about it was, it's just a hurdle that I've got to get over. In the end, I think it made me a better, stronger, mentally tougher person.
He proved that 6 months later, making his A-League debut before scoring in the next game against Brisbane.
One way, then the other. Can he finish? He can!
A moment he's described as the best of his life so far.
We hadn't scored a goal in a while, and it was at home as well, so the crowd really got behind us, and it was awesome to look up into the crowd and see people on their feet screaming and cheering, and it was surreal. It was really surreal. Sometimes I think about it and it's like, wow, did that really happen? It was a really good feeling.
His goal now is to establish himself as a first-team regular in a successful Jets outfit.
As a team, we sat down and we had a meeting in Melbourne a couple of weeks ago, and we all said that the main goal for this season is to make the six.
At this time, we acknowledge the grief and suffering of the man's family, and also we are looking after the welfare of our police and their families. But I can assure you that every aspect of this investigation will be investigated and by a critical investigation team and overseen by the Professional Standards Command. Protocol predicts that this matter will be done by the Homicide Squad, and we have officers from that squad attending here this evening.
Bullet marks on a car window and a nearby business. Evidence of what unfolded at Warners Bay yesterday afternoon. The knife-wielding man who was shot dead, post office employee Steve Hodge. He had been at work in the morning before coming back later in the day. Why he returned and what sparked the confrontation with police is now under investigation by a critical incident team which arrived last night.
The critical incident team will actually look at all the witnesses, and we have the police chaplain available for the police, and we're also monitoring the welfare of the man's family.
Mr Hodge was a part-time Australia Post worker of 20 years, and the union says he had a long history of mental health issues. He was well known and liked by locals.
Yeah, he was just a lovely he was quiet, but always nice and said hello and talked to you and things like that.
Australia Post says it's saddened by the loss of a valued long-term team member and that it's doing everything it can to provide his family with support, as well as its staff and customers. Business resumed as usual here at Warners Bay today, including at the post office. Members of the community say they're shocked and saddened by the incident.
Tragic for something like that to happen in Warners Bay, you know.
I just think it's very sad.
I think that we see enough of these things happen in America and stuff. It's just that we're kind of a bit insulated from this thing in Australia, that we tend to be sort of surprised by it.
Anyone who witnessed the incident is urged to come forward.
If they have information, if they have footage, please contact the local police.
Renee Feder, NBN News. Inside Denman's tiny town hall, it was standing room only. Outside, the sea of orange spilled onto the sidewalk. Under the Planning Assessment Commission's microscope, the Drayton South Mine expansion, which Anglo-American claims this time ticks all the right boxes.
It's doubled the setback from the horse studs, and we've gone behind the second ridge, which the first pack advised us to. And we've done all the technical work to demonstrate there will be no impact on equine health.
Despite those assurances, the Hunters thoroughbred breeders maintain the proposed mine's proximity would force them to leave.
The Upper Hunter Shire stands to lose over 2,000 mares during a breeding season, and that would just decimate our boutique broodmare farms that support them, and all of the subsidiary industries that support those farms would also go with it.
Also on the line, 500 mining jobs.
We love our jobs, we love where we work. The uncertainty for us builds anxiety. We just need a result at the end of the day.
Some say the focus should be on promoting more sustainable industries like tourism.
Once the coal is gone, there's nothing else left and you can't do anything else with the properties.
But with the lines already drawn, the Upper Hunter's new mayor says it's now a matter for the state government.
We've got to the stage where cumulative impacts from the resource sector have reached a head. And we have to look at where we go from here. The government has to make a decision basically on what they want to do.
The public hearing continues tomorrow. A preliminary report is expected next month, with a final determination likely by the end of the year. Amanda Douglas, NBN News.
Renowned chef Scott Webster has been in the hospitality game for 40 years. It's an all-hours industry, but at the moment, Sundays are off this restaurant's menu.
It's a day on the weekends when a lot of people want to go out and enjoy themselves and when my business can be at the peak. But because of the penalty rates on Sunday, it's just not feasible financially for me to open.
He says he'd consider opening Sundays and public holidays if the loading was dropped to the Saturday rate. It's a call that's been taken up by industry group Restaurant and Catering Australia.
Well, there's a 25% difference in the rate, and that 25% basically is the make or break point for these businesses. On average, they make 3.6% net profit. It doesn't take much to push them over the edge.
The organisation says a survey it commissioned shows restaurant and cafe owners would employ more people, 1,400 in the Hunter, if penalty rates changed. But unions are sceptical. The Shop Employees Association told NBN News its experience is such a move would not translate into more jobs. It also says workers should be properly compensated for weekend work. Restaurant and Catering Australia says it's just after a better balance.
we're saying they should be compensated for weekend work. We just need to have one weekend rate, simplify the system, ensure that they're compensated fairly, but also it's fair for the businesses.
It's shaping as a major industrial issue leading up to the next federal election.
It's a very difficult topic to talk about, but we know from the work that we do at Lifeline on our crisis line that talking is very important.
It's the search for liquid gold in Morpeth.
Essentially what we're doing is this is a treasure map for Hunter Water, or really a treasure hunt.
Today marked the first day of drilling to find a riverbed known as a paleo channel that's believed to run under the floodplain between the Patterson and Hunter rivers.
We know that there's water probably about 40 metres below the surface. It's a matter of actually finding it and then actually determining whether it's of drinking water quality.
The work involves a rig boring through gravel until it hits bedrock. It will then draw soil and water samples.
Next week, we'll then actually have a smaller casing that'll be inserted into the hole that we've done today, where we'll actually be extracting water. We'll then have to test the water. Then there'll be further investigations to actually quantify the actual amount of water that we're essentially standing over today.
There's no doubt this is an exciting project, and if they do find a new underground drinking water source, Hunter Water believes it'll provide additional drought security for the whole of the Lower Hunter.
It'll be just another supply we've got as an emergency supply, so in times of drought that we can rely on to make sure that the Hunter's got robust water supplies and that we don't have to move into restrictions.
The water testing is expected to be complete by November. Michael Kane, NBN News.
You're very quick at taking the dollars from my constituents for their insurance. You need to be equally quick in settling claims in a fair and reasonable manner.
Something old and something new for the Jets for season 2015-16.
Back to the blue that I remember as a young bloke playing around here, so it's great to see. I think the club will remember the days of glory in the past, so referring back to that gold is a bit of nostalgia for everyone. So refreshing and obviously a new identity for the club moving forward, and I think it's great.
The Jets women and the A-League side will feature in 2 double headers at Hunter Stadium. The teams will also share a sponsor for away games.
I think it's a great idea and like a great thing that we get to play before the men. We haven't really been connected with them in the last few years, so it's good we're kind of going in the direction of one club.
As part of today's launch, local artist Mitch Revs used the sponsor's products to paint the players.
It was an obvious choice. We wanted to back a national football code that got to every place in the country we have a store.
That includes Brisbane, where the Jets men will travel this weekend for yet another pre-season friendly.
We want to prove everyone that the group's changed, the mentality's changed, and that this town could be successful again. And I think that vibe's not only amongst the group, the playing group, the coaching staff and the club, but I feel that around town as well.
This is the type of football the Blues have strived for all season.
What we wanted to do was peak at the right time of the year. So, we've been building towards September and, we've been playing some really good football. So.
After a 19-match unbeaten run, Minor premiers Terrigal Avoca crashed to successive defeats to Newcastle City in the final round and a week later in the major semi.
Minor premiers doesn't really mean anything now. It's the grand final that everyone wants to win.
Terrigal captain Pete Van Dam says his players need to be smarter with the football and only worry about themselves.
The way we look at it is you've got to fight fire with fire, so we'll be coming out to hopefully get to the footy first and use it a lot better than we have been. We've been playing the opposition now for the last couple of years. We know what they've got and what they don't have, so the emphasis is really on what we're going to bring to the game.
City's Aaron Seen believes staying on the ball against the Panthers will be crucial.
I think it's important that we don't change too much from our last 2 weeks. I think we were harder at the football, just our will to win.
Michael Kane, NBN News.
Monday week, it's off to Dallas, race there. I'll zip back home again for another week or so and then head back to Las Vegas for the final round. Well, I'm 5 points behind in second place. There's only the two of us can actually win the World Championship now. Third place is Hannes, he's back out. So, yeah, there's 24 points up for grabs and, we'll see what happens.
One of my little kids came in and he had some coins that he got out of his money box without his parents knowing and just said, "Here, Jackie, here's some money to help find William."
"10 years ago, Michelle Davis experienced an anguish no mother should.
I just wished my breath would stop. And then every morning I'd get up and be disappointed because it hadn't.
Her teenage boys, Brendan and Matthew, both killed in a horrific accident at Morpeth. Since, she's been working to get young people to consider the consequences of their actions behind the wheel, in particular, the heartache they'll leave behind.
I always say to students, one of the first jobs your mother will have to do is think about what clothes she will bury you in. And for me, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do it. I could not walk into my son's room and pick clothes to bury him in. His friends did that. So again, that's that ripple effect. 6 young men in my boy's room picking clothes to bury their best mate in because I couldn't move.
But a decade on, police are still being confronted with these devastating scenes. Last month, police launched Operation Silverstone after the number of people killed on Hunter roads this year reached 29. There's been no loss of life since.
There was a couple of motorcyclists caught at 140 kilometres an hour in an 80 zone. We're disappointed with that.
Police say they can't stress enough the impact speeding has on a driver's reaction time and their chance of survival. It's something Michelle instills through her Roadwise program, now operating in Victoria and attracting interest from the US.
I sometimes think that we're not doing much at Roadwise, we're just sharing everything and hoping. But I think to myself, there were 700 people at my boy's funeral, and if only 100 of those young people actually pulled their head in and thought about this and thought about the respect they need to give to their mates and their friends who they've just lost, then 100 people, the ripple effect is huge.
Emma Murphy, NBN News.
A fitting place to farewell the Hunter sporting legend that is Ken Clifford. Today at the Newcastle Basketball Stadium, hundreds gathered to honour the man who served as the Chief Executive Officer at the Hunter Academy of Sport for 27 years, which to Ken was so much more than a job.
He also always saw it as a means to create better people, to teach them about the worthwhile things in life and make them better citizens.
When Ken took over, there was just one group of basketballers at the academy. Now there's more than 600 athletes under its guidance.
He innovated and created, I think, an operation which I suspect at that time was the envy of a lot of academies of sports.
Back to his school teaching days, and he brought a lot of that to the academy. In some ways, the school teacher part of him came forth, and that was part of Ken.
But before he was an administrator, he was a well-accomplished cricketer and one of the top referees with the National Basketball League.
He had a great love of cricket, and he had a great eye for picking junior rep players. I remember when he picked Gary Gilmore. Gary Gilmore was playing second grade for Waratah, and he got picked in the Newcastle representative team. And then Gary went on to be one of the best cricketers in the world.
Something else remembered, his can-do attitude and fighting spirit, qualities that stayed with him until the very end while battling cancer.
They say rugby is a game played in heaven. If that's true, Ken will have already started to organise it.
Vivian von Drainen, NBN News.
It was this performance against the two Blues the Hawks would rather forget.
Every time it gets brought up, everyone says, let's not talk about it, let's concentrate on this week.
That concentration is on tomorrow's final against the Waratahs, who won't be a pushover.
Waratah have been the quiet team, and they've full credit to them, and they've come along quite well.
The Blue and Gold's coach believes the do-or-die match could serve them well.
If we get through this weekend with no injuries, it's probably a blessing in disguise, really.
Turning to the real NRL, tomorrow's elimination semi-final will see Macquarie take on Cessnock. The Scorpions will look to bounce back after their 4-point loss to Lakes United last weekend, taking on a Goanna side which produced its best performance of the season in its demolition of Central. On Sunday at Harker Oval, the Seagulls take on Western Suburbs, with the winners booking a place in the grand final. The Lakes half and hooker combination of Chris Adams and Brad Murray could hold the key to their side's chances of toppling the defending premiers. Murray, a former Rosella, made the switch to the Belmont-based club at the start of the season and has no regrets.
It's been really enjoyable, didn't know if it was going to be the right decision at the start of the year, but as the weeks went on, I was really starting to enjoy myself and love it out there.
Michael Kane, NBN News. It's considered the most challenging sporting event on the planet. 13 stages through all types of climates and terrain, the Dakar Rally pushes the limits of all who enter.
10,000 Ks is a long way, and you got to try and make sure you keep everything running smoothly on the bike and for yourself.
Competing in the event for the first time, Hunter rider Toby Price finished third overall.
It was a bit of a shock to myself and I think to the world for a third place in my very first Dakar. So it was, I've definitely set my bar very high.
With 5-time Dakar Rally champion and last year's winner Mark Comer retiring, he's hoping to catch up with his former KTM teammate to give him the edge.
He probably wasn't letting too many secrets slide that first year for me. He definitely helped a lot to get me up to speed quick, but it's he'll probably be able to release a little bit more stuff now.
On his own admission, mistakes were made in navigation on his debut ride.
If it's your day, it'll all go well, and if it's not, then it'll feel like the world's crumbling in front of you.
Having a strategy is another key component in the Dakar.
If it's hard, really hard navigation, you don't want to be the first guy out on the track making trail for everybody else.
Since the podium placing, 2015 has moved along nicely for Price, claiming his 4th Finke Desert Race title while dominating another Australian off-road enduro championship. Next week he'll travel to Morocco for the final round of the World Rally Championships.
This year's been unreal. It's been another dream come true. For me, it's good. It's a good lifestyle, and I get to travel Australia and I get to travel the world, doing a job and doing a sport that I love.
Michael Kane, NBN News.
The patrol season is in sight, and so too is the ocean's most feared predator. Heightened shark activity on the mid-north coast, as well as 2 close calls in Foster and the Central Coast this month, has some beachgoers nervous. But this summer, the Hunter Surf Lifesaving branch isn't taking any chances. The organisation is upping the ante on procedures around suspected and confirmed shark sightings after a 2-year review.
We identified that our approach to searching for a shark after one's been sighted was a little bit different from place to place.
The new incident response practices mean in the case of a sighting, those on duty are now obliged to follow an 8-point action plan.
First thing we do is close the beach and remove the swimmers from the water and engage a search. Now that search primarily involves the swimming area.
Once a sighting is confirmed, the beach must be evacuated. Lifeguards will initiate a full-scale search for at least 1 hour and alert neighbouring patrolled beaches. They say the new measures should make the public feel even safer.
It can rest assured that we do have a consistent approach to doing it, whether it be the lifeguards here in the Lake Macquarie region or up in Newcastle or down in Wyong for that matter. We all have a process that we follow now.
Georgina Smythe, NBN News.
We had a couple of tough days. The very first leg was a fairly strong headwind, very icy cold, like 4 degrees, and it was 100 k's long. The second day, though, was 182 k's from Narrabri to Tamworth into a slight headwind. Pretty tough day.
They're the last two sides standing and ready to battle it out for the flag. The Blues dominated territory early, but they lacked polish in front of goal. Despite the one-way traffic, the Panthers took an unlikely lead, courtesy of a City indiscretion. Corey Billins making no mistake. A 50-metre penalty gifted Terrigal its second major soon after, Jimmy Polglaze converting. 2 back-to-back goals, the second from Blues forward Mitch Crawford, had them lead by 3 at the break. The second quarter saw Billins turn the game in the way of the Panthers with 3 goals in 5 minutes. Jacob Dawes stemmed the flow for Newcastle City as the Blues trailed by 8 at the break. But the Panthers were too good in the end, going on to win by 22 points and taking out back-to-back premierships. Michael Kane, NBN News.
They're the images that have brought the crisis in Syria to the forefront of Australian minds. The Abbott government has announced it will take an extra 12,000 refugees in the next 12 months, but are we likely to see any come to the Hunter?
I doubt it. It would require a significant investment, and at this point there are plenty of centres within the system with purpose-built facilities that would be used well before the Hunter.
Comparisons have been drawn between this situation and what the people of Kosovo faced in 1999 that saw 800 refugees temporarily placed at Singleton. But Mr Fitzgibbon says the Syrian crisis is different.
These are permanent settlements, whereas of course in the past, both in 99 with the Kosovars and more recently, we've only ever talked about the possibility of temporary housing.
Meanwhile, Hunter residents are finding ways to help. Katie James is part of an online group collecting baby carriers to send to refugees.
As a mother of a 3-year-old boy myself and a little baby, I really felt compelled to do something and help in any way that I could.
The Warners Bay mum has already collected 70. On Thursday, she'll take them to Sydney so they can be distributed overseas.
I also think that we could potentially save the lives of small children who could potentially get lost amongst the chaos if they're trying to walk behind their mum or if their mum's just holding them in their arms.
To help Katie reach her target of 100 carriers by Wednesday, visit the Aussie Baby Wearers for Refugees Facebook page. Vivian von Drainen, NBN News. Remembering loved ones who never came home, all 1,800 of them. Today, the 20th Minor Memorial Day service was held in Cessnock. Thankfully, this year, no new names were added to the list.
Absolutely relief. We had a dreadful previous 12 months. This time last year we had 4 fatalities and it was a very emotional day.
But there was something new, a mural to complement the district's memorial wall. Titled Waiting, it highlights the loss that follows a disaster.
I think it's a universal image. It's the image of loss. And loss is something we all have to deal with. And I think in this particular incident, it's the loss of miners.
And like every year, a desire to make the industry as safe as it can be was a key message in the service.
The industries that CFMU covers, and forestry, construction and mining, we have someone seriously injured or killed every 6 minutes.
We must continue to work and strive to have the best so that mine workers can go home to their loved ones at the end of every day.
Vivian von Drainen, NBN News.
It's the buzz around town. Local bees making local honey right out of people's backyards. It's called Urban Hum, a Newcastle initiative by beekeeper Kellyanne Lees. She was spurred into action after learning about the decline in the world's wild bee populations.
They're in trouble around the world and they're really important for our survival. They pollinate a third of our food.
Urban Hum has hives in 20 Newcastle suburbs in places you'd least expect. Ms Lees says each suburb's honey has a unique flavour.
Because they're feeding on all sorts of different things, street trees, the pockets of bushland, people's native and exotic gardens, all of that flavours the honey.
Hive host Mari Williams says it's an educational experience for children.
They come in and we share some of the honeycomb with them. They suck a bit of honeycomb and take the honey out and spit the wax in the garden.
And with flowers out for spring, Ms Lees is as busy as a bee.
Got to collect stray swarms around the place and split hives and generally do spring hive checks. It's a really important time for health checks for the hives.
The finished product is packaged according to suburb. Ms Lees says there's plenty people can do to protect bee habitats, like stop using pesticides.
And the other thing is plant bee-friendly gardens. There's lots of natives and exotics that bees really, really love. And if you want to attract bees to your garden and improve pollination in your vegetable garden, that's a way to do it.
Georgina Smythe, NBN News.
We can have newborns through to people on their 70s and 80s who participate, and that's the beautiful thing about it, is that there's a course and an event for everyone.
It means that we'll see that some of the world's best women surfers coming to Newcastle, and it's a fantastic effort from the Newcastle business community to put this together. There's been a lot of community pride put into this event from the businesses, and we'll be having a breakfast on October 9th where the naming rights sponsor will be selected.
Lakes hadn't even touched the ball when West posted first points. A Jade Porter flick pass, finding Peter Mannion. Lakes set up camp in West's half, and eventually the weight of possession proved too much. A quick shift to the left would eventually find James Varker, who managed to avoid going into touch. It took a Jade Porter crossfield kick to break the deadlock. Lakes spilled the ball in the in-goal before Mannion pounced to grab his second. But the Rosellas were in again a short time later. Joel Brown sending Reggie Saunders through the defensive line, virtually untouched. Just when Lakes appeared gone, they hit back. A determined effort from Hayden Jeans would bring the visitors within striking distance. There was nothing fancy about the Seagulls' attack, but it was having an effect. Dylan Harton wrestled his way through 3 defenders to eventually touch down and even the ledger. Lake's comeback was complete with 4 minutes remaining. Brad Murray burst through the line. His offload hit Josh Charles on the chest for the match winner. In yesterday's semi, the Scorps opened the scoring with a crisp backline movement. Quick hands found teenage sensation Malik Dalu, who finished the job in the corner. Cessnock hit back. Powerhouse Sean Metcalf proved too hard to stop from close range. Macquarie took the lead early in the second half. Andrew Sumner stepped his way through the Cessnock defence. The Scorps now just one win away from the grand final, while the Goannas season is over.